Jennifer, you're all I see. You're the only one for me. They call you just a housemaid's name, but to my heart you're worth all fame. Jennifer, hold my hand. We'll face this world together.
Do you know how much that vase costs? It came from Italy.
I am sorry, madam. It slipped from my hand.
Jennifer, are you hurt?
No, sir.
You are asking if she is hurt? Look at my vase, Philip.
We can replace a vase, Mom. We cannot replace someone's dignity.
If this is the first time you are coming across Nenye Stories, please do us well to subscribe or press the follow button. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to share. My listeners, have you ever watched a family use every weapon available to them? Money, manipulation, false accusations, family pressure to stop two lovers from being together? Have you ever watched love survive all of it? This is the story of Jennifer and Philip, a housemaid and the only son of the family she worked for, two people who had absolutely no business falling in love, and fell in love. Deeply, stubbornly, in a way that refused to be silenced, no matter how many people tried to silence it. The Harrison mansion sat in Okoye, Lagos, the way all big houses in Okoye sit, with the quiet confidence of money that has been in one place long enough to stop feeling the need to announce itself. White walls, a garden that stayed trimmed because someone trimmed it every morning, cars in the compound that stayed clean because someone washed them every day. Inside that house, there were rules, not written ones. Nobody needed to write them down because they had been understood for so long they had become part of the air. The rules said who mattered and who didn't, who belonged and who was just passing through, who deserved respect and who deserved, at most, a salary and a quiet room in the servants' quarters. Jennifer Okoye was in the second category. At least, that's what the house thought. She had come to the Harrison mansion as a housemaid, young, quiet, hardworking in the way that people are hardworking when they have a sick mother at home and two younger brothers to keep in school, and no room in their life for laziness because too many people depend on them getting things right. She was good at her job. She cleaned carefully, cooked properly, kept herself to herself. She was not the kind of girl who made trouble or asked for more than she was given. She had the particular dignity of someone who knows their circumstances don't define their worth, even when everyone around them acts as though they do. But in the Harrison household, the person who set the tone for how everyone was treated was Grace Harrison. And Grace had a way of making sure everyone in that house understood exactly where they stood. It was a crystal vase that started everything. Jennifer was dusting a shelf, the kind of careful, methodical dusting that good housemaids do, working their way across surfaces without rushing. When the vase wobbled, she reached for it. She missed. It fell and shattered on the floor in a way that sounded, in the silence of that sitting room, much louder than it had any right to. Grace Harrison appeared like she had been waiting for exactly this kind of moment. The vase was from Italy, Grace said. The vase cost more than Jennifer's entire village, Grace said. And then, before Jennifer could finish apologizing, Grace slapped her across the face. Jennifer lowered her head. Tears fell. She said sorry, because what else do you say when you are a housemaid in someone else's house and their hand has just connected with your cheek over a broken vase? That was the moment Philip Harrison walked in. He was the only son of that house, 28 years old, educated abroad, returned to Lagos to take his place in the family business. He had his mother's sharpness and his father's quieter nature, and he had spent enough time outside Nigeria to have developed, somewhere along the way, the uncomfortable habit of seeing people as people, regardless of what they did for a living. He saw Jennifer on the floor near the broken pieces of crystal. He saw the tears. He knelt beside her, the way someone kneels when they are genuinely concerned, not performing concern. "Jennifer, are you hurt?" "No, sir." His mother told him to look at her vase. He told his mother it was an accident. She called him soft. He said something that clearly surprised her, because Grace Harrison was not a woman accustomed to being surprised by anyone in her own house. "We can replace a vase, Mom. We can't replace someone's dignity." Grace walked away in fury. Philip helped Jennifer up. In that single exchange, without either of them knowing it, something had begun. It didn't announce itself. That's the thing about this kind of love. It doesn't come in with noise and drama. It comes quietly, in small moments that seem unremarkable until you look back later and realize each one was a step towards something. Philip found Jennifer one evening, sitting alone on the back stairs, crying quietly in the way people cry when they think nobody is watching. He sat near her, not too close, a respectful distance, and handed her a bottle of water and said something she told people later she had never forgotten. "You're more than your job. You're a human being, and you deserve respect." She told him nobody had ever said that to her before. He thought about that for a long time afterward. What kind of world was it, where someone had to reach 20-something years of life before hearing a sentence that basic? They began to talk, not in long conversations, just small exchanges in the garden when Jennifer watered the flowers. A question about her family, answered honestly. A story about her father who had died, her mother who was sick, the two younger brothers whose school fees sat on her shoulders every term. Philip listened, really listened. Jennifer found herself, slowly, carefully, trusting a man she had decided from the beginning could never be trusted. Not because he was untrustworthy, but because he was from the wrong world, and she had enough sense to know how those stories ended. Meanwhile, inside the Harrison dining room, a different conversation was happening. Grace was telling Philip about Chief Benson's daughter, educated, beautiful, from a family of the right standing. His father agreed she was exactly the kind of woman who should become part of the Harrison family. Philip stared at his plate and said nothing. The evening it properly changed between them was raining. Jennifer was pulling dry clothes from the line outside, rushing before the rain reached them, when Philip called out to her. She stopped under the small roof overhang, rain falling behind her, and he walked toward her through it, his shirt soaking through as though the rain was simply not something he was willing to let stop him from saying what he needed to say. "Every time I see you smile, my day becomes brighter." He paused. "Jennifer, I think I'm falling in love with you." Her eyes filled with tears. She told him not to say it. She told him she was only his housemaid. She told him his parents would never accept it, that he would lose his family's respect. He told her that money doesn't make someone valuable, that her heart does. She told him she loved him too. And then she said the truest thing in that whole conversation. "Our love can never work. We live in two different worlds." She picked up the laundry basket and ran into the rain. Philip stood there, soaking, watching her go, and on the upstairs balcony, where she thought nobody would see her, Grace Harrison stood watching everything. Her jaw was tight, her eyes were cold, and the words she said to herself, quietly, in the voice of a woman who has already begun to plan, were these: "Over my dead body, no son of mine will ever marry a housemaid. This relationship ends today. But love has a way of outlasting even the most determined opposition." And what Grace Harrison did not yet understand, what she would spend the next several months discovering, painfully, one failed plan at a time, was that she was not dealing with a phase. She was dealing with a decision, and some decisions, once made by the right people, cannot be unmade by anyone. Grace Harrison did not waste time. The morning after she stood on that balcony and watched her son declare his feelings for a housemaid in the rain, she picked up her phone before the sun had properly risen and called her older sister, Doris. "Come to the house," she said. "Early. It's urgent." Doris arrived the next morning, sharply dressed, eyebrow already raised before Grace had finished explaining. The maid, her nephew, love confessed in the rain. She sat back in her chair, thinking the way someone thinks when a problem has been presented to them and they are already several steps ahead. Then we must act quickly, she said, before this becomes something harder to undo. 2 things, she suggested. First, increase the presence of Chief Benson's daughter, the woman they had already identified as the right match for Philip. Make sure she was around him as often as possible. Create opportunities. Let proximity do the work that argument hadn't managed. Second, find a reason to remove the maid from the house entirely. Leave that to me, Doris said. Meanwhile, Jennifer was fighting her own quiet battle. In the garden, when Philip came to find her the next day, she told him she couldn't do this, that someone might see, that his mother already had a reason to hate her over a broken vase. Imagine if she knew about something deeper. Philip told her he didn't care. She cared, she said, for both their sakes. He asked her if she had meant what she said in the rain. When the words came out before she could stop them, she paused, holding the broom tightly, and said yes, but meaning it didn't change anything. She walked away from him again. Philip stood among the flowers, troubled, watching her go, beginning to understand that the woman he loved was caught between her heart and a fear that was entirely reasonable, and that love alone was not going to be enough to fix that. Doris's first move was the money offer. She walked into the kitchen where Jennifer was washing dishes, introduced herself with a cold smile, and made it very clear very quickly what the conversation was about. Triple Jennifer's monthly salary. Leave the house quietly. Today, if possible. Never come back. Jennifer stood at the sink, water still running over her hands, and told her she didn't understand. I think you understand very well, Doris said. My nephew has been seen with you. That cannot continue. Jennifer's voice shook when she said it, but she said it clearly. She had done nothing wrong. She needed this job. Doris gave her 2 days. 2 days in which Jennifer sat on her small bed in the servants' quarters, turning the offer over and over in her mind. Triple the pay, her mother's medicine, her brother's school fees. The numbers added up to something that would genuinely change her family's situation. But there was Philip's voice in her head too. Your heart does. And the question she couldn't escape. How do you disappear without a word to someone who told you in the rain that he loved you? She couldn't decide. She put the envelope in a drawer instead of her bag and told herself she would know by morning. She didn't. Philip began to notice her differently that week. Not with the warmth of someone falling in love, but with the alertness of someone who suspects something is wrong. She was avoiding him. She looked pale. She asked him, one afternoon, a question that stopped him cold. If I ever had to leave this house suddenly, would you understand? He didn't understand. He didn't accept it either. And when he finally cornered her long enough to talk properly, she told him about Doris. The offer, the money, the instruction to disappear. Philip's face went hard in a way she had never seen before. He told her she had no right to decide that. He took her hand and asked her what she wanted, not what his mother wanted, not what his auntie wanted, but her. She told him she wanted to stay, but she was scared, Philip, so scared of what his family would do and what the world would say about a maid who dared to love her madam's son. Then let them talk, he said. I'm not asking my mother's permission to love you. I'm only asking yours. And for the first time, Jennifer smiled through her tears and let herself believe, just for a moment, that this might be possible. Grace, watching from a window later that week, saw them laughing softly together in the garden and picked up her phone immediately. Doris, the girl is still there. Whatever you offered her, it isn't enough. Move faster. Doris told her to give it 2 more days. Pushing too hard would make Philip suspicious. Grace said they didn't have 2 days. What Grace didn't say, because she didn't fully know it herself yet, was that the plan was already failing. Jennifer wasn't leaving. Philip wasn't cooling off, and something about the way the two of them looked together, even from a distance, told a story that no amount of money or pressure was going to easily rewrite. Doris changed tactics. She went to Grace with a new suggestion, not direct confrontation, something subtler. Increase Jennifer's workload until the job became unbearable. Limit the time she and Philip could find alone. Tire her out, wear her down, make the house feel impossible. It was more careful, Doris said, less risk of scandal. The household manager, Mr. Adisa, received new instructions. Jennifer's list of daily duties doubled: laundry, cleaning, cooking, polishing silverware, all in the same day, all before the Benson family arrived for dinner that evening. Philip walked in on it and immediately understood what was happening. He turned to Adisa, who was uncomfortable but honest enough to confirm it. Madam's instructions. Philip's jaw tightened, but he had no immediate way to stop it. The Benson dinner was exactly as Grace had planned it. Chief Benson's daughter, Adeize, sat beside Philip, elegant and pleasant, saying all the right things. Grace watched with quiet satisfaction. Jennifer moved around the table, serving, refilling water glasses, visibly exhausted. Their eyes met once, briefly, as Jennifer leaned in to serve Philip's plate. Hers were tired but warm. His were apologetic. Grace noticed. She cleared her throat loudly and redirected Jennifer back to the kitchen. Under the table, Philip's hand tightened into a fist. Later that night, when the guests were gone and Jennifer sat alone on the garden bench, drained in her uniform, Philip came and sat beside her. He told her he knew what his mother was doing. It wasn't coincidence. Jennifer said she knew too. She had known for days, but she didn't have the strength to fight it right then. This is their house, she said, looking at him with a tiredness that went deeper than one long workday. Their rules. I'm just someone passing through it. Philip listened to that and said something that surprised her. He said, it doesn't have to stay that way forever. She asked what he meant. He told her about the warehouse he owned in Apapa that he had done nothing with for 2 years, about the logistics business he had been thinking about the savings he had that had nothing to do with his family's money, about a life he could build that wasn't controlled by his mother's approval or Doris's scheming. Don't promise things out of anger, Jennifer told him. I'm not angry, he said. I'm clear. She didn't pull her hand away. Then came Comfort. Blessing, one of the other house girls, had told Jennifer a story one afternoon in the kitchen, in a low voice, glancing toward the door like someone who knew they were saying something they weren't supposed to say. There had been a girl before Jennifer. Her name was Comfort. Grace Harrison's younger brother had taken an interest in her, and within a month, Comfort had disappeared. Nobody knew exactly what happened, only that one day she was there and the next she was gone, and her family had suddenly, mysteriously, been relocated to a new house in another state. Madame Grace doesn't just send people away, Blessing said. She makes sure they never come back. Jennifer went to Philip with this immediately, and Philip did something Jennifer hadn't expected. He drove to find Comfort. She had a small hair salon on the outskirts of Lagos. A hand-painted sign, a life she had rebuilt from almost nothing over 2 years. She froze when she saw Philip walk in. He told her why he had come. There was someone new in the house, Jennifer. He was afraid the same thing was happening again. Comfort sat with him and told him everything. His uncle Kenneth had genuinely wanted to marry her. His mother had appeared to agree to his face. 2 days later, Grace had called Comfort into her office and told her things about Kenneth. Gambling debts, a secret fiancé in Abuja. None of it was true. Comfort found that out years later. But at the time, she had believed it, rejected Kenneth based on the lies, and then found her job slowly made impossible until she resigned, believing, even as she walked out the gate, that it had been her own decision. Your mother doesn't slam doors, Philip, Comfort told him. She makes you believe you walked out yourself. Philip sat in his car afterward, gripping the steering wheel, replaying those words. He drove back to the mansion with urgency in his face and a decision forming that he had been approaching for weeks but had not yet fully reached. What came next was the bracelet. Grace announced one morning that her gold bracelet was missing. Adisa was instructed to search the house. He was given, without asking too many questions, directions about where to begin. They searched Jennifer's room. They found the bracelet in a drawer, wrapped in cloth. Jennifer stared at it. She had never seen it before in her life. Philip walked in during the confrontation. He looked at the bracelet on the table. He looked at his Aunt Doris standing near the door, and he understood, immediately and completely, what had happened. He told his mother someone could have planted it. Grace asked why anyone would do such a thing. Philip looked at Doris again, but said nothing yet. Not because he wasn't certain, but because he needed more before he could prove it. Grace told Jennifer to leave that day. No investigation, no chance to defend herself. The evidence was found in her room. The matter was closed. Jennifer walked out of the Harrison compound with her small bag. Philip caught up to her at the gate, told her he didn't believe it for a single second, promised he would fix it. She looked at him with the exhaustion of someone who had promised themselves they wouldn't keep hoping, and said, "You keep promising things, Philip. I keep losing everything." She reached into her bag, found a pen, tore a small piece of paper, wrote her home address on it, and pressed it into his hand. Then she walked away. Philip stood there, watching her go. Above, through a window, Doris watched with a faint smile. She thought it was over. She was wrong. Philip moved quickly. He spoke to Blessing, who admitted she had seen Doris walking from the direction of Jennifer's room early that morning, before the bracelet was even reported missing. He spoke to Adisa, who admitted, after some careful questioning, that Doris had requested the spare key to the staff quarters 2 days before the bracelet situation. And then Philip drove to Doris's house. He laid it all out, the key, Blessing's account, Comfort's story, all of it. Doris went still when he mentioned Comfort's name. Philip told her what he was going to do. He was telling his mother everything. Today, in Grace's office that evening, with the door closed and his voice steady, Philip told her the key, Adisa's testimony, Comfort's experience, the manufactured gambling debts, the fake fiancé, the planted bracelet. Grace's composure cracked. She hadn't known the details of what was done to Comfort. She had trusted Doris to handle it appropriately, as she had trusted her this time too. "Did you know, or did you trust her again?" Philip asked. Grace admitted she had only told Doris the girl needed to go. She had not asked for a bracelet to be planted in anyone's drawer. "Then you need to fix what your trust allowed to happen," Philip said. Jennifer lost her job, her reference, her reputation, over a lie. There was a long silence. Then Grace asked the question she hadn't asked in weeks of scheming and pressure and failed attempts to separate her son from a girl she had decided wasn't good enough. "What do you want me to do?" Philip told her, "Clear Jennifer's name and keep Doris away from the family's decisions. But clearing a name takes more than one conversation." And Philip had come to understand, through everything that had happened, that waiting for his mother to fix things one step at a time, while Jennifer sat in her village with her sick mother and brothers to look after, was not something he was willing to do. He had the paper with Jennifer's address in his pocket. He opened his laptop and booked a trip to Enugu. Philip Harrison had never driven to Enugu alone before. He had traveled, certainly, abroad for university, across states for business, in comfortable cars on roads where someone else knew the route. But this drive, made with nothing except Jennifer's handwritten address, folded carefully in his pocket, and a certainty in his chest that had been building for months, was different from all of those. He left Lagos before dawn. He drove through the long expressway where greenery pressed in on both sides and the city gradually thinned out into something quieter. He stopped once at a fuel station to ask for directions to Umuoji village and got them from a young man who pointed down the road with one arm and described a big church he should look for before turning left. He found the church. He turned left, and 30 minutes later, he was rolling slowly down a dusty village road as children stopped their playing to stare at an unfamiliar car that clearly did not belong there. He parked near a small house with a blue gate and stepped out. A young boy spotted him first, Jennifer's brother Emeka, who disappeared inside the house shouting her name. Jennifer came out, and when she saw Philip Harrison standing in the dust of her village road, she stopped completely. Her mother appeared in the doorway behind her. In the particular, ancient way that Nigerian mothers assess a situation in a single glance, Jennifer's mother understood in about 3 seconds that this was not an ordinary visitor. She told Philip that standing outside was not their custom and invited him in. Philip sat on a simple chair in a simple room and said the most important things he had ever said in his life, without any of the furniture or surroundings that usually surrounded his words. He apologized first, for his mother, for his aunt, for the bracelet, for the reputation that had been damaged by people who had no right to damage it. Then he told Jennifer's mother what he wanted, not to offer money so Jennifer would disappear quietly from their lives. Doris had already tried that, and it was not what this was. He wanted to take Jennifer back to Lagos and enroll her in nursing school, pay for everything, the fees, the accommodation, the books. Not because of what was between them, but because Jennifer deserved a chance at the life she had always wanted, regardless of whether she ever chose him. Jennifer's mother looked at him for a long moment. Then she went inside and came back out with drinks and handed one to Philip with both hands, the way you give something to a person you have decided to receive. Philip drank the drink, and then he looked at Jennifer, who was sitting quietly across from him with tears forming in her eyes. I want to be part of your life, Jennifer, if you allow me. But this offer stands whether you choose me or not. You deserve this chance either way. That night, Philip found a hotel in the nearby town, as Jennifer had directed him to one when he asked, and Jennifer sat with her mother after he left, in the quietness of their house, processing everything. Her mother said something simple. She said that few people would even do the least for someone they didn't have to help, and this man had come all the way from Lagos to sit in their house and apologize for wrongs he hadn't committed and offer help he wasn't obligated to give. In the morning, Philip came back before driving to Lagos. He stood with Jennifer and her mother outside the blue gate. He handed Jennifer an envelope, money to buy a phone, he said, so they could stay in contact. Money for anything else her family might need before she traveled. Jennifer's mother held Philip's hands in both of hers and told him God would bless him. He thanked her, said it was the least he could do, got in his car and drove back toward Lagos. Jennifer stood on the road and watched him go, knowing that something had shifted, not suddenly, not dramatically, but in the permanent, quiet way that real things shift. She bought a phone 2 days later, a simple smartphone from a vendor at the local market, her brother Emeka bouncing excitedly beside her and asking if he could use it. She called Philip that evening. He picked up before the second ring. They talked about the apartment he was looking for, about the nursing school's entrance exam timeline. 1 month, he had found out, registration closing 2 weeks before. She would need to be in Lagos within the week. 1 week. She said yes. Lagos greeted her the way Lagos greets everyone who has been away from it, with heat and noise and the particular energy of a city that never fully pauses. Philip picked her up at the motor park, took her bag from her hands, and said something that made her laugh. Welcome to Lagos, future nurse. The apartment he had found was small and clean and furnished with care, a bed with a proper frame, curtains on the windows, a kitchen with pots she had not had to buy, and a reading table positioned directly in front of the window where the light came in best. Jennifer walked through each room slowly. She touched the bed frame. She stood in the kitchen and looked at the small orderly counter. She found the reading table and sat at it briefly, testing how it felt. I've never had a room this nice in my whole life, she said. Now it's yours, Philip said. Every corner of it. He had also, before she arrived, gotten his hands on past exam questions from an old contact who had worked at the nursing school. He handed them to her in a neat bound stack outside the registration office after they enrolled her 1 week before the exam. She studied every night at the reading table by the window while Lagos went on outside. Philip came by regularly, not to distract her, but to help her, quizzing her from the past questions, bringing food so she didn't forget to eat, sitting nearby on evenings when she needed company more than silence. "What is normal body temperature?" he asked one evening. 36.5 to 37.5 degrees Celsius, she said, without looking up. "Look at you," he said, already sounding like a nurse. She smiled without lifting her eyes from her notes, but the smile stayed. On the morning of the exam, Philip parked outside the school and paced near his car for almost 2 hours, checking his watch, calling Tunde to say he couldn't sit still. Tunde laughed, told him it was her exam, not his, told him to relax. Philip said it felt like his too. When Jennifer came out, he rushed toward her before she had fully cleared the doorway. How was it? She told him the questions were almost exactly like what they had practiced. He pulled her into a quick hug, and she let herself be hugged, laughing into his shoulder. 2 weeks later, the results came. They were sitting together in her apartment when she refreshed the page and the words appeared on the screen. She gasped. She passed. Philip shouted with a joy that was entirely unrehearsed and completely genuine, lifting her off her feet and spinning her once before setting her down, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm going to be a nurse, Philip, a real nurse." "You already are one, Jennifer. Today just made it official." She enrolled. She studied harder than she had ever studied for anything. She went to school in the mornings and came home to her reading table in the evenings and pushed herself through the exhaustion with the particular determination of someone who has been told by circumstances that they can't and has decided to prove otherwise. Philip came by regularly. He brought snacks and fruits and called them brain food for the hardworking nurse in training. He helped with revision when she let him. He watched her grow into something he had believed she could be before she fully believed it herself. Graduation day came. The dean stood at the podium and read out the name of the best graduating student with the highest distinction in the class, Jennifer Ijeoma Okoye. The hall erupted. Philip stood in the crowd and clapped louder than anyone else in the room, his face the particular kind of open and unguarded that you only see on people experiencing joy that is entirely untangled from pride. Jennifer walked to the stage and received her certificate and stood there for a moment, looking out at the faces of the people who had come to celebrate her, and found one face in particular and held it. Outside the hall, she ran to him. He lifted her briefly. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we make sure a woman like you doesn't waste her talent," he said. "Leave that part to me." What Philip arranged next was not a favor. He was clear about that, to himself and to the hospital administrator he spoke to, a family friend who owed him nothing and was offered nothing except the truth. Jennifer had graduated best in her class, and all he was asking for was a chance to prove herself in an interview. She got the interview. She performed as well as her records suggested she would. The job was hers. She stood in her crisp nurse's uniform on her first day, name tag reading Nurse J. Okoye, and greeted her first patient with the particular warmth of someone who has fought for the right to stand exactly where they are standing. A senior nurse nearby watched and nodded quietly. One night, months later, Philip sat in his room at the Harrison mansion, turning a small ring box in his hands. He had been turning it for a while. He put it in his pocket and went downstairs. His parents were watching television. He stood before them and told them he had found the woman he wanted to marry. She was a nurse, he said. She worked at a government hospital in Lagos. She was hardworking, intelligent, and kind. His father unmuted the television, smiled, asked her name. Philip said her name was Ijeoma. His father said to invite her over. His mother said yes, invite her. Let us see this Ijeoma for ourselves. Philip said he would. That weekend. The weekend came. The Harrison sitting room was arranged properly, the family dressed and waiting. A car pulled up. Jennifer walked in wearing a simple, tasteful outfit, nervous but composed in the way that she had learned to be, over many hard months, composed. Grace's teacup stopped halfway to her lips. Mr. Harrison's eyebrows rose. Doris, seated nearby, said under her breath, "It can't be." Mr. Harrison stood, genuinely warm. Asked if this was the same Jennifer who used to work there. Jennifer said, "Yes, sir, it's me." Grace set down her cup. The expression on her face turned to something cold and absolute. Philip stepped to Jennifer's side. "There's nothing to explain, Mom. This is Jennifer, the nurse I told you about, the woman I intend to marry." Grace said over her dead body, "A former housemaid. A plan," she called it. Philip's money paving every step. Jennifer said she had never stolen the bracelet, and she had worked, on her own merit, to become who she was. Grace said she didn't care. She said it wasn't enough. She said it would never be enough. And Philip said something that silenced the room so completely that even the sound of the city outside seemed to pause. "Then I hope, Mom, that you learn to live past that dead body, because I am marrying Jennifer, with or without your blessing." The traditional wedding happened in Umuoji. The compound was filled with colored canopies and the smell of jollof rice and pepper soup and the sound of drums. Jennifer's mother directed the preparations with the energy of a woman who has been waiting a very long time for this particular joy and intends to get every detail right. Jennifer sat before a mirror as her aunties adjusted her coral beads and fussed over her head tie and tried not to cry and ruin her makeup. Philip arrived with Tunde beside him, looking, as Tunde pointed out immediately, nervous. "Relax," Tunde said. "You just have to say yes to everything and pay whatever they ask." "Small price," Philip said, "for a lifetime with Jennifer." The elder spoke. The palm wine cup was presented. Jennifer walked slowly through the seated crowd, pausing near several young men, to the delight of the watching guests, who laughed and cheered, and then she stopped, finally, in front of Philip. "I choose you, Philip Harrison." He drank from the cup. The compound erupted. The drummers picked up. People danced and sprayed and laughed and celebrated with the full, unrestrained joy of a village that has been waiting for this day and intends to mark it properly. Philip's father was there. He gave a speech on behalf of the Harrison family that said what Philip had needed to hear his mother say and hadn't. "We promise to love and protect Jennifer as our own daughter from this day forward." Grace was not there, but nobody let her absence steal the day. Jennifer leaned her head on her mother's shoulder during one quiet moment and said she wished Philip's mother could see how happy they were. Her mother told her that some people need time and that what mattered was that Jennifer had proven herself not to Grace, but to God and to herself. It was enough. It was more than enough. The court wedding came days later, small, official, witnessed by Mr. Harrison and Tunde and Ifeoma, Jennifer's colleague. Simple gold rings, the registrar's words, a kiss that the small room received with warmth. Mr. and Mrs. Philip Harrison. Toronto received them with cold air and unfamiliar skylines and snow on the rooftops of buildings that Jennifer had only ever seen in other people's photographs. She stepped out of the airport, wrapped in a coat Philip had bought for her before they left Lagos, and the cold hit her face like something both shocking and somehow exactly right. She laughed when it hit her, an involuntary, surprised laugh, and Philip pulled her closer and said, "You'll get used to it. Welcome to our new home." Their apartment was not a mansion. It was a cozy, modern space with plain walls and a window that looked out over a city that was still entirely foreign to them both. Philip had furnished it simply: a sofa, a bed, a table in the kitchen, a reading desk near the window, because by now he knew Jennifer well enough to know that a reading desk near a window was not a luxury, but a necessity. "This is really ours," she said, standing in the middle of the room, looking around slowly. All ours. No inherited money here, no mansion, no anyone's permission, just what we build together from now on. She told him she liked that even more. Building things from nothing is slower than inheriting them. Philip had always known this in theory. He discovered it again, practically, in the first months in Toronto, filing documents, navigating a new country's requirements for his logistics business, learning the difference between how things worked in Lagos and how they worked here, and finding that some lessons could only be learned by making the mistake first. It was work, real work, the kind that has no cushion of family money underneath it, no back office at a family company to fall back on, no driver to call when the car situation becomes complicated, just two people figuring it out one day at a time. Jennifer enrolled in a bridging course at a nursing program in the city. Foreign-trained nurses in Canada had to demonstrate equivalence with local standards. There were exams, practical assessments, additional coursework. The administrator who interviewed her had reviewed her Nigerian credentials and her graduation record, best in her class, distinction, and told her that based on what she was seeing, she didn't foresee any issues. Jennifer called Philip immediately after the meeting, too excited to wait until she got home. "They are willing to take me." He said he was proud of her. She could hear the smile in his voice even across the phone. The months that followed had a particular texture to them, the kind of texture that belongs to a life being built carefully, piece by piece, by two people who have decided to build it together. Jennifer studying at her desk while snow fell outside the window. Philip on his laptop nearby, working late into the night on his business plan, occasionally glancing over at her with the quiet satisfaction of someone watching something they believe in take shape. The two of them eating dinner at their small table. The two of them discovering which Lagos things couldn't be replicated in Toronto and finding acceptable substitutes, and which Lagos things turned out to be unnecessary in a new context, and which Toronto things they found themselves, slowly and somewhat surprisingly, beginning to like. They were happy in the steady daily way that happiness settles into a life when the drama has finally passed, and what's left is just two people and a future they are building brick by brick. At the Harrison mansion in Lagos, the house was quieter than it had ever been. Grace sat with a cup of tea that went cold without being drunk, staring out of windows, moving through rooms that felt larger and emptier than they had when Philip was in them. She had won, in the sense that she had always used the word, the housemaid was gone, Doris's schemes had ultimately succeeded in their stated goal, Philip had left. But winning, it turned out, did not feel the way she had expected winning to feel. Mr. Harrison watched his wife for 6 months and said very little, because he understood that some lessons take time to arrive at properly, and that arriving at them faster doesn't necessarily mean arriving at them at all. He waited. He was patient. And one morning, when he found her sitting with untouched tea and the particular expression of a woman who has been awake for too long with her own thoughts, he sat beside her and said the simplest thing, "Call him Grace. Pride has already cost you 6 months. Don't let it cost you more." What if he doesn't answer? Then try again tomorrow. Doris came to visit around this time. She found her sister quieter, older looking, different in some way she couldn't immediately name. Grace told her she was tired of being right and alone at the same time. Doris began to say something about this being a necessary cost. Grace interrupted her. "That boy is my son," she said. "And somewhere in Canada, he's building a life without me in it." Doris went still. She had not, in all the months of planning and executing and watching things unfold, fully imagined what it would feel like for Grace to sit in a large empty house and feel the absence of the one person all the protecting had supposedly been for. She had protected the family, she had always told herself. She had protected Philip from a mistake. But Philip didn't feel protected. He felt abandoned by his own mother. And Grace, sitting across from her sister in a room full of furniture and not much else, was beginning to understand the difference. In Toronto, On an ordinary evening, Philip's phone rang. Jennifer was in the kitchen. Philip picked up his phone from the counter and looked at the screen and went completely still. His mother's name. Jennifer turned off the stove and walked over without being asked. "Answer it," she said. He hesitated. She told him he wouldn't know anything if he didn't pick up. He answered. He put it on speaker. Grace's voice, when it came through, was not the voice that had said, "Over my dead body," in the Harrison sitting room. It was smaller. It had been carrying something for 6 months, and the weight of it was audible in every syllable. "Philip, my son." "Mom, are you crying?" "Philip, I carried you for 9 months. I nursed you. I raised you with my own hands. And now 6 months have passed, and you don't even call your own mother." His voice softened. He told her he was sorry for the silence. She asked if Jennifer was there. He looked at Jennifer. She nodded. He told her yes. There was a pause on the line, long enough to contain a decision. Then Grace asked to speak to her. Jennifer took the phone. Her voice was steady. Grace's was not. "Jennifer, I owe you an apology, a long one. I let pride convince me that protecting this family meant pushing away the person who makes my son truly happy." Jennifer told her she had never wanted to take Philip away from her. She had only ever wanted to love him honestly. Grace said she saw that now, that it had taken losing him 6 months of silence to understand what she had almost lost forever. At the Harrison mansion, Mr. Harrison and Doris stood nearby listening, neither speaking. After a while, Doris said quietly that she hadn't realized how much this was costing her sister. Mr. Harrison said, "Pride costs more than we ever admit." Doris nodded slowly. For the first time in a very long time, something that looked genuinely like regret moved across her face. Not performed. Not calculated, real. The call ended with a promise. Philip told his mother they would come home someday, not to argue, just to be a family again. She said she would like that very much. He told her he loved her. He had never stopped, even during the silence. She told him she loved him too. More than he knew. When Philip set the phone down, Jennifer put her arms around him and held him for a moment without speaking. He exhaled into her shoulder, long and slow, the way someone exhales when they've been holding something for longer than they realized. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Lighter," he said, "like I've been carrying that silence without knowing how heavy it was." She told him families find their way back. Sometimes it just takes time. He thanked her for pushing him to answer. She told him to thank himself. He was the one who picked up. Later that night, they sat on their balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket, the city lights twinkling below them, snow falling in the gentle way it falls in Toronto when it isn't in a hurry to arrive anywhere. Jennifer asked if he thought they would go back one day, really go back. He said he thought they would, when the time was right, when the wounds were fully healed. But for now, she finished his sentence before he could. For now, this is home. He pulled her closer. She rested her head on his shoulder. The snow fell softly around them, quiet and unhurried, covering the city in something clean. Philip said, very softly, so softly she almost didn't catch it. From a broken vase to a broken family, healed by one brave decision, to love without conditions. That's our story, my love. Jennifer smiled into his shoulder. And it's still being written, she said. That is where I will leave them. Not at the end, because their story, as Jennifer said, is still being written, but at a good place, a warm place. 2 people on a balcony in a city that was foreign to them both, making it home together, one day at a time. I told you at the beginning that this was a real love story, not the clean, easy kind, the kind that gets tested and survives the testing. The kind that starts in an unlikely place, a mansion in Okoye, a crystal vase, a dusting cloth, and travels through scheming and planted evidence and long roads to village houses, all the way to Toronto and a balcony covered in snow. The kind that, when the dust settles, turns out to have been stronger than everything that tried to stop it. Jennifer Okoye became Jennifer Philip Harrison. She became a nurse in Canada. She became the woman that the girl who came to the Harrison mansion with her head down and her shoulders squared against whatever was coming had always, without knowing it, been on her way to becoming. And Philip Harrison, the only son, the heir, the man Grace had planned a future for and lost in the process of planning it, became the man he had always had the potential to be. Not the one defined by his family's money and his mother's ambitions. The one defined by a choice he made in the rain on an evening when a girl told him it was impossible and he decided she was wrong. My listeners, I leave you with one thought. The people in this story who tried to use power to control love, they didn't fail because love is stronger than power. Love isn't always stronger than power. Sometimes power wins, and the Jennifers of this world disappear quietly the way comfort disappeared and rebuild their lives in small salons on the outskirts of cities and carry the memory of what was taken from them for years. What made the difference here was not love alone. It was love combined with something else, with courage, with the willingness to build something real instead of just waiting for someone to give you permission, with the decision to move, to act, to drive to Enugu, to speak truth in a sitting room, to answer a phone call instead of letting it ring. Love without courage is just a feeling. With courage, it becomes a life. Thank you for staying with me of this story. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me who your favorite character was. Tell me if you cried. Tell me what part stayed with you. I'll be reading every single one.